Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. Hello, readers. Thanks for joining me today with this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast, where I am going to talk about all of the romance books that I read in August. Some of these I've reviewed on shereadsromancebooks.com, some I haven't, but I'm going to give you the quick and dirty on each read and let you know if I liked it and recommend you add it to your TBR list, or if it didn't quite meet expectations, it might be something that you want to just borrow from the library or just, quite frankly, skip altogether and move on to another book already taking up space on your TBR list. Because, let's face it, right? There is never a shortage of romance books that catch my eye, but there is only so much time available and money to spend, quite frankly. So I want to only read the best of the best, and that's why I do these monthly recap episodes, so that if you have found that we have similar taste in reading, that you'll have an idea of where you want to spend your time and money when it comes to reading romance. And I want to say that looking over my list for this past month, that almost half of the books that I read in August are available in Kindle Unlimited. So if you haven't bitten the bullet and tried Kindle Unlimited, then now might be the time so that you can check out some of these titles. I personally love it because it takes the pressure off, really, of trying new authors that I've never read before, or if I'm not really sure about a book, it's really no harm, no foul, just, putting it in my Kindle Unlimited library and checking it out. So again, if it's in Kindle Unlimited, I'm not risking, $4 or even $15 on a book that I might not like. So for one monthly fee, I read and maybe not finish, if the case may be, as many books as I want. So it's perfect for us romance readers, especially because so many of my favorite authors make their books available in Kindle Unlimited. So I hope I've convinced you if you need a little push to do that today after this episode. But let's kick things off on my August 2024 reading list with Wicked Serve by Grace Riley. I do have a full book review up on shereadsromancebooks.com for this one. And you can also check out my interview with Grace, where we talk about this book and our love for sports romance books in my podcast episode 68. So be sure to listen to that episode after this one. But Wicked Serve, let's see, it is a book for all of you new adult hockey romance book lovers out there. It is book 4 in Grace Riley's popular Beyond the Play series, but I feel like it can be easily read as a standalone. I personally did read book 2 in the series, which had Izzy featured the heroine a little bit in that book, but absolutely feel like this can be read as a standalone. It features a secret romance between Nikolai, a hot hockey player, and Izzy, a college volleyball player. And despite being a rival to Izzy's hockey playing brother, the two actually have this really cute summer fling before going their separate ways back to their own colleges. But then Nikolai ends up getting kicked out of his school for various reasons and transferring to Izzy's college, where he does become her brother's teammate, and they can't help but rekindle their hooking up in secret, but it obviously morphs into something more. Both Izzy and Nikolai, they had really interesting backstories, I thought. She kind of worries that she doesn't live up to her family's expectations. They're all this family of amazing athletes, and he has some trauma issues from his past. Overall, I would say I really liked the character focus of this book, in that Grace really doesn't shy away from the steamy bits. the book was pretty long. It comes in at over 400 pages, and I did find myself sort of skimming the last few chapters just to pick up the plot points. But I would recommend it to readers who love college romance books with spice and characters who are athletes, but who also have these compelling aspects to their lives outside of their sport. So you can check out Wicked Surf. All right, the second book that I read in August was Five Brothers by Penelope Douglas. And I'll say that Penelope never fails to push boundaries and completely hook me with her books. I have been looking forward to Five Brothers since the end of 2023, which is why it made my list of most anticipated new romance books of 2024. And she gave everything that I sort of come to expect from her books in this one. I don't know how she pronounces the heroine's name in this book. Kristen, Krisjen. She is an 18-year-old from sort of the rich side of the tracks of their town that borders the bay where the Yeager brothers live. Her family life is unhinged, with her absent father who stole her college fund, basically divorcing her mother, and a mother who's also just completely absent from caring for her younger brother and sister. So life definitely looks a lot better for her across the tracks, but somehow only Kristen can see it because the Yeager brothers are all dealing with their own struggles in this like pressure cooker of a house together, with all of them living under one roof. So this is a taboo romance. Had a really great opening scene that already kind of has you going like, what the fuck, right? And then has you guessing along with Kristen who her mystery sort of one night stand brother is throughout the book, because the lights were off. She has no idea who it was, though you kind of pretty much guess early on. But the mystery guy aside, that doesn't keep Kristen from sampling a few of the brothers as the story unfolds. So I should say right away, if you don't like sharing, well, it's not really, they're not all sharing together, but if you don't like the heroine with lots of different guys, then this isn't really the book for you. It kind of gave me similar vibes to Credence by Douglas. So if you liked that book, then I think you'll find some similarities here in terms of the characters and who Kristen is drawn to. And again, sort of sharing aside, what struck me most was how this 18-year-old became sort of the glue keeping this household and family together when two in particular were really falling apart. Though I would say the overall story did seem to veer in a lot of different directions at times, it kept me hooked and wondering sort of how it would end throughout it all. I will also say there is one very, very heavy theme that is discussed in this book, so I highly recommend checking out the trigger warnings before reading it. But if you're, into something a bit taboo with characters who are all sort of a mess in their own way, then you can check out Five Brothers by Penelope Douglas. Next up for the month for me was The Game Changer by Lana Ferguson, which I was super excited to read since part of my review for her prior release, The Fake Mate, is featured in the front pages of this paperback. It was so exciting to see She Reads Romance books mentioned alongside like Kirkus Reviews and Publishers Weekly. But as for the story, so Lana wrote in her acknowledgments that this was a really tough one for her to write. And I don't think it showed in her actual writing because that was good. But the story, I would say, was just sort of your typical brother's best friend type of romance. And if you kind of read the book summary, then you get the gist of the book essentially. And you really don't need to know more than that, which, I mean, isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's just a typical brother's best friend romance, but it won't necessarily be then a book that's going to stick in my mind just because it didn't really grab me overall. But a good read, in general, if that makes sense. So Delilah, she has this TV cooking show that is losing ratings. And Ian is a pro hockey player that she knew when she was a young teen and who is best friends and teammates now with her brother. So he had moved away to a different town and team, but now he's back, having transferred to his original team. But rumors around his failed marriage are resurfacing. So he goes on to Delilah's cooking show to help her ratings and to also help his image. So I kind of expected the book would focus more on him being on the show, but I think he was maybe on it twice, and it really wasn't a huge focus of the book. They then decide to kind of fake date to continue to help their images, but they didn't even really date much, honestly, either. So, and I have to say also throughout, I got a little annoyed that he kept calling her a brat. I understand he had a hard time like seeing her now as a woman than the young teen that she was when he was initially in town, but now she's this grown-up woman, and then she tried to like be talked dirty once they started hooking up, and that just didn't really work for me either, unfortunately. So while I think the writing is great, I didn't really fall for these characters or really get into their story. So it was kind of just an okay read for me, but I am really looking forward to Lana's monster romance that releases early next year. So keep your fingers crossed on that one. The next book that I read in August was The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. I actually had a ticket to one of her book tour stops, but alas, I didn't make it last minute because my son had his championship game on that same night. So I chose him instead, but I will be picking up my signed book hopefully here in the next couple of days. You can catch my full book review on shereadsromancebooks.com, but I basically vicariously like ate and drank my way through France, Spain, and Italy along with Kit and Theo in this second chance love story. I mean, the amount of research that Casey must have done for this book was crazy, I think. And I kind of said after reading this book that if Casey organized a food and wine tour like the one that Kit and Theo went on in the book and sold it along with her, or at the time of her book release, they would have made some serious coin. I mean, I would have booked that baby so fast and in anticipation of eating just a smidge of the amazing food and drinking some of the incredible wines and spirits that they described in this book. Anyway, all of that is to say that the travel, the food, and the wine were honestly the highlights for me in this book. But while that incredible detail may make a few readers' eyes sort of glaze over, given the sheer amount throughout this book, I actually kind of sunk into every description, trying to sort of imagine what they were seeing and tasting and experiencing. The story overall, though, is about Theo, which ironically, I didn't realize until like halfway through the story was short for Theodora, by the way. So Theo and Kit are bisexual childhood besties who and they become partners, but they have this major misunderstanding and fight that led them to canceling their tour the first go around and breaking up for 4 years until they find themselves on the tour together again at the time when the voucher's like about to expire. And sort of while they're on this tour, they come up with this idea of a competition to see who can hook up with as many people while they're on the tour. Okay. I have to give McQuiston props that none of her books are copycats like any of the others or really any other book that I've read. They're constantly changing up their stories, the characters, the settings, while continually making a name for themselves in queer romance, which I think is pretty cool. I loved how McQuiston wrote from Theo's point of view for the first half of the story, but then switched to Kit's point of view for the remainder of the book. So it was really cool getting into both of their heads. But as for so I loved the food, the point of views, blah, blah, blah. But as for their little competition, I could have done without it, quite frankly, as I don't think it really added much to the story other than to make me kind of think they were a bit immature. It would have been just enough to have them sort of pining away for each other now that they're back into their, forced proximity situation and sort of dancing around each other. They did not need to be like hooking up with other people, in my opinion. And I think this will turn off a lot of readers. Even though the hookups weren't really explicit, I just didn't care that they had this pretty open, eventual relationship to any and all partners. So honestly, Red, White, and Royal Blue, I think will forever be my favorite McQuiston book. However, If you love their work and really like descriptions of food and wine, then you might want to give this queer romance a shot. Okay. This next book, I could not contain my love for and was singing its praises in my Facebook group, the She Reads Romance Book Reader Lounge, as soon as I finished it. And so if you're not in my group, then just know that Play Along by Liz Tomford is hands down one of the best romance books of 2024. This was the next book I read, and I loved it so, so much. And honestly, along with the entire Windy City series, which is available in Kindle Unlimited, by the way. So there's really no excuse for you not to read, play along, or to binge read the entire series, because you should. I should also say that this book also landed on my list of most anticipated new romance books of 2024 before it even had a book summary, before it even had a book cover, because I just knew that it was going to be one of the best of the year, and boy, did it deliver. I don't think I can adequately convey how much I loved Isaiah Rhodes and Kennedy Kay in this sports romance, and how fast I devoured their love story while hoping it would never end. For a quick summary, Isaiah is the shortstop on the MLB baseball team, and Kennedy is an athletic trainer for the team, and she's the only woman working for the team at the time. Isaiah has always liked her and sort of like tease and flirt with her, even though she was an engaged woman, like for the past 4 years, until all of a sudden he notices that her engagement ring is missing from her hand. So right before this current season starts, he's out in Vegas with his boys, just having this last hurrah. And she happens to be there at the same time for a bachelorette party. And they end up running into each other. And then the two of them hang out for reasons I won't get into. And then, oops, they wake up married to each other the next morning, which is a problem for Kennedy, especially because it jeopardizes her job. Like, she's pretty much going to get fired. So to help her keep her job, they pretend that getting married was on purpose and plan to stay married so that, again, she can keep her current job and get her dream job at another team for the following season. Now, I think any other author could probably write a baseball romance where a player falls for the athletic trainer on staff, but Liz made this book so much more. And I'm afraid my review online, just doesn't do it justice. I loved the man that Isaiah was for Kenny. His patience, his kindness, his love, his teaching were everything that makes him like top boyfriend material in my mind. And Kenny had this just really incredible backstory, and she just truly blossomed into the woman that she wanted to be throughout this story. I think every interaction and moment that Liz wrote in this story just carried their romance along at this perfect pace, while also really helping the reader come to know them as people so that you're just rooting for them to the very end. I could seriously probably talk about these characters and how much I love this book and all of Liz's books all day long, but trust me, read it, read them all. I am so happy that we still have Rio's story to finish off the series, but I'm going to be pretty devastated when it's all said and done. But that's all right. I'm sure she'll have another book that I will just gravitate towards after that. So Play Along by Liz Tomford. Definitely add that to your TBR list. All right. The next book that I also read in Kindle Unlimited, and is a long-awaited sequel to a book I mentioned in episode 1 of the podcast about romance books that make you ugly cry, the book that made me ugly cry is A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. And you absolutely need to read that book first before reading her latest release, which I did read this past month, which is A Thousand Broken Pieces. It was one of my most anticipated new romance books of the year also, because I really couldn't wait to see what Tilly was going to give us after totally putting my heart through the ringer in A Thousand Boy Kisses. And I'm probably already giving or alluding to spoilers for that book by sharing that A Thousand Broken Pieces is really a book about grief with, I would say, a side of romance. So Savannah is 17 and she has been struggling with grief for the last 4 years without making much headway. So her therapist and parents agree that she should go on this worldwide tour with other teens struggling with grief to see if it can be like this turning point for her. And I'll just say first, the tour is amazing, amazing. If this exists in real life, then wow. Or if it's even just something Tilly Cole created from research, then she is amazing. It had to also cost a very pretty penny to put on, but I absolutely loved how she weaved in aspects of the culture and history and nature of sites in England, Norway, the Philippines, India, and Japan that helped this group of teens sort of process their grief. I loved all the messages throughout the book that were just so incredibly poignant. And so while on this trip, Savannah meets Kale, an angry 18-year-old hockey player grieving the loss of his older brother and who had walked away from the sport that he loved. I thought they were, very sweet together for a young adult romance, but it's also very, insta-love, given that they spend maybe 3 weeks together on this trip and they, profess their love and commitment to each other as soulmates, which, okay, I guess. I get that, but Poppy and Rune truly felt like soulmates in 1,000 Boy Kisses, having grown up together, but I kind of just went with Savannah and her love in this book. I will say the backstories of all of these teens were pretty hard to hear, not going to lie, so just be prepared going into this one in case there's any trauma in your life that can be triggering. Otherwise, I highly recommend this book as a great follow-up story to 1,000 Boy Kisses and a wonderful look at grief and how to try and move on with your life from tragedy while knowing that grief kind of will always be a part of you. Okay, stick with me. I got a few more books to talk about from August. And the next one was available in Kindle Unlimited, and that is The Best of All by Carla Sorensen, which made my list of most anticipated new romance book releases for July of this year. So I gave it a go. It is book 2 in a series, and I haven't read the first one, but I really didn't find it difficult at all or could tell that there was another book, so definitely easy to read as a standalone. I was intrigued by the found family aspect to this romance where two people become guardians of a little girl after their best friends pass away in a car accident. Zoe and Liam have known each other over the last 10 years, but it's always been this sort of contemptuous relationship where they kind of needle each other all the time ever since they first met. But that's because it turns out that it is because Liam fell for her pretty much at first sight, but at that time she was engaged and she ended up getting married to somebody else, but then got later divorced. And now they are both raising a cute little 3-year-old, but Liam wants to, when he finds out, wants to totally buck at the responsibility initially, thinking that he is not a family man. And you kind of come to understand why he doesn't want a family as the story goes on. And then, of course, they admit their attraction to one another and, it goes from there. So it was a cute story. I gave it 3.5 stars, one that I definitely enjoyed, and I'm glad I read it in Kindle Unlimited. Again, sort of the perfect book and reason why I read books in Kindle Unlimited, because I'm not sure that I would have bought this book, but I'm glad that I read it and enjoyed the story. Next up was picking up my advanced reader copy of A Werewolf's Guide to Seducing a Vampire by Sarah Howley. I was super excited to read this new paranormal romance because I love werewolf romance books, and Sarah Howley is an author I have not yet read before. I did read this as a standalone, but this is one instance where I think I would recommend actually reading the 2 prior books in the series first to learn more about the world of Glimmer Falls and the couples that reappear in this one. Honestly, it wasn't hard for me to follow, but I maybe would have felt just more drawn to the community having read the prior 2 books, but I'm not really sure. I liked Ben, the werewolf. He wasn't your stereotypical alpha male werewolf. He knitted, he dealt with anxiety on the regular, and was just this really very thoughtful guy once he became aware of the curse that made Eleanor, the heroine of the story, the vampire succubus, do whatever the owner of the crystal that she was tied to ordered, if that makes sense. So, but that being said, I think at times he was almost too nice, right? And sort of overextending himself and helping with his sister and taking things very slowly with Eleanor. Eleanor was interesting, being both a vampire and a succubus. I liked her backstory of being tied to the witch in the woods for so many years, but it kind of took a long time to really make any headway with that mystery, that I started to kind of lose interest since her one-woman, theater performance shows weren't really grabbing me. So it was cute how she was trying to like get up to speed on the modern times, and she kept referencing Star Trek, I guess, throughout the book. She kept watching old episodes when she was with the witch in the woods, but I kind of lost steam with this couple as a whole, to be honest. Overall, I think Holly is a terrific writer, and I like that she pulled a lot of different storylines into this paranormal romance, but again, it just didn't really grab me as much as I sort of had hoped, so I started skimming, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. Next book for August that actually released, I got an early copy, it released in August, is called Take It or Leave It by Laini Hatcher, which is the first book in her new Small Town Romance series. You may have heard me and Laini already talking about this book if you listened to the previous episode on Small Town Romance. She sent me this amazing care package of goodies with a copy of the book and a copy of the prequel novella, which you can get for free from her website, lainihatcher.com, by the way. And I have to say that this is good and was just, a joy to read. Laini really has Small Town Romance down with the love story between Will, this grumpy guy who's now in charge of his family's apple farm, who is grumpy because he lost his dream of a career in the major leagues when he injured his shoulder during his first major league start. And despite his family farm, depending on tourism dollars, he doesn't like tourists, or leafers as he calls them, people who travel to Kirby Falls in the fall to see the leaves change and take in, the town's festivals and the like. And one such leafer is Becca, who essentially has no family, and she has needed a change of scenery. So she's traveled to Kirby Falls and basically just becomes a part of the town during her stay. So this book is really about her falling in love with the town and with Will, and then with Will in the town falling in love with her right back. It definitely has all of the key elements of what there is to love about Small Town Romance. Plus, it is also available in Kindle Unlimited, so I highly recommend it. It's a perfect book for the coming months to read during the fall. Absolutely. My next romance book for the month of August was Learning Curve by Max Monroe, which just released. So I wanted to read this book because it was available in Kindle Unlimited, and because of the way the authors were hyping it up, it made it sound pretty cool. But after finishing it, I felt like I kind of wasted several hours when I should have been reading something else. I just think that these authors might now be writing for a different audience that is not me, because I just have not jived with their last two books, which are a bit different from their past work, I think, in my opinion. So this is the first of probably more in a series that features the grown-up kids from their Billionaire Bad Boy series, which I honestly have not read. And it brings in the long-lost Winslow siblings. I loved the Winslow series, so I was really curious and anxious to see their connection to this new series, in which this book features a virgin cheerleader who falls for the bad boy, who realizes that his dad has this secret family, and he has now enrolled into college in a class whose professor is actually his half brother. Okay, can you follow that? All right, so Max Monroe warned that this book has drama, and I was kind of in the mood for it, to be quite honest. Bring on some new adult college drama. But my hang up was that the book, to me at least, lacked this central plot line. I felt like their writing is excellent, and I liked the storyline about Finn, the hero, trying to get revenge on his half siblings that he never knew. But honestly, that storyline fizzled and resolved in probably 2 pages. I felt like that part really could have been built up more to the story. But where it kind of got messy for me was the heroine of the story. So the girl, she'd been dating somebody for 2 years in high school, didn't want to give it up, and rightly so. But then she comes to college, she meets Finn, and she gives it up to him, honestly, after meeting him for like 5 seconds, okay? Plus, they hardly spend any time together in the book. So I don't really know how their feelings for each other developed, as there are two actually really big instances where that come up and weeks go by that they have like no interaction with one another. So I really didn't understand her story arc at all. And then it takes this crazy turn at the end for several more chapters, needlessly, in my opinion, with this added storyline that just made the book long and didn't really add to their story. So while I liked the Winslow brothers, again, as I said, that aspect of the story just sort of came and went. So I honestly would pass on this one unless you just like crazy college romance books, then give it a go. I hate negatively talking about a book, but this one just wasn't for me, to be honest. All right, so moving on from that book to another one of the best romance books of 2024, and that is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This was a reread for me to get ready for the She Reads Romance Books book club meeting in the Q&A with Annabelle, and oh my gosh, did I love this book, and so did everybody else in book club. We could not stop raving about it during our meeting and bringing up so many great themes and gems that were included in this romance. I loved it because I just adored Allie's transformation, and I freaking loved Ethan, the hero of the story. They meet, or I should say re-meet in a way, at the dog park in town when Allie's dog pees on this guy's shoes, but the oops event leads him to asking her out on a date where Allie is separated and she's going through a divorce, and so she puts on her hard pants instead of her usual sweatpants and has sort of the best night with this guy that she met at the dog park, only to find out the next day that her date is her friend's younger brother. Now, I said this in book club, that if you were to tell me that I would totally fall for a guy nicknamed Scooter, who is a skateboarder, and he dresses in costume for fun, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think so. But Ethan, aka Scooter, was such a great book boyfriend. I loved how Allie got her life back on track after her divorce, but it was all the little themes that Annabelle sort of weaves into the story that made it really incredible. And not to mention that the writing is really phenomenal as well. I think I mentioned this book during my first read of it, which was actually an audiobook listen, and I instantly put that on my list of best romance audiobooks because it was so good. But then reading it for the second time, I just loved it even more. So if you haven't read it already, definitely check out Summer Romance. It was perfection. And so on that high, that wraps up my mini reviews for August. I can already tell you that you're going to want to tune in next month to listen to my September reading list episode, because right now I am reading my advanced reader copy of The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen, and it is amazing. I think I wrote to her on Amazon or on Instagram, and after like page 20, and I'm like, this is so good and phenomenal from the very first page, I tell you. And I am just loving every single page and interaction between Lyra, who is a thief and who was cursed by Zeus when she was in the womb that no one would ever love her, and Hades, the Greek god who picks her to be his champion in the Crucible, which is this contest run every 100 years to determine the next ruler of Olympus. This book is 500 pages, you guys. And I hope it stays this good as I continue it. And if so, I'm going to go back and binge read all of her previous books. I think it is like an adult Percy Jackson book. If you love Greek mythology, it has a little Hunger Games aspect to it. And I think if you loved all of the challenges that were in the Writer's Quadrant and Fourth Wing, then you are absolutely going to love this book. It releases September 3rd. So again, if you're a romantasy lover, check it out. And I'll just talk more about it in my September episode. And so that wraps up this month's reading list of what to read and what to skip. As we gear up for more great reading in September, keep in mind the September prompts for the She Reads Romance Book Reading Challenge, which is to read one historical romance or a book made into a movie or TV series. Be sure that you're signed up for my newsletter, as I always share the challenge prompt and book recommendations every month for the challenge. But to round out this episode for 2 more book recommendations, I always love to pull a card from my A Year of Reading romance card deck for a reading prompt for the month. This is my 52 card deck of reading challenge prompts and romance genre categories and tropes to help you answer the question, what should I read next? If you just don't know what you're in the mood for or what read you should grab next. So it is available to purchase on shereadsromancebooks.com. Just click on my shop page. You'll find it there. And it's perfect right now to grab either for yourself or for a family member or friends, because the holidays are coming, folks, and it would make a really great gift. Okay, so I'm pulling today's card. And this one, the reading challenge is to read a book set in another country. Another book set in another country. I would recommend On Dublin Street by Samantha Young. That's the first one that kind of comes to mind, set in Scotland. This is probably her most popular and famous book. Such a good friend's brother romance where the heroine is sort of struggling with the loss of family, and she's over in Scotland and she has a roommate and she ends up falling for her roommate's brother, who's just like an awesome hero. Such a good story. So definitely check out On Dublin Street if you haven't read it. Now, if you flip the card, on the other side from the reading challenge is a romance category or trope. In this card's category and trope is nanny romance. So for nanny romance, let me think. I would recommend Caught Up by Liz Tomford, right? I was just like talking ad nauseum about her Windy City series with my review of Play Along, which Caught Up is another baseball romance, and this is the book prior to Play Along, and it's about Isaiah's older brother who is a pitcher for the baseball team, and he basically finds out he's a father when the mother of his child drops off his baby at his doorstep. And so this is about him like trying to maintain his career while raising his son, and he keeps firing all these nannies, but then his coach says, hey, why don't you hire my daughter as the nanny for the summer while you figure things out? And so he, of course, falls for Miller, the nanny, and it was just fabulous. Such a great 5-star read. So add that one to your TBR list as well. All right, so there you go for more book recommendations. I hope that I've made your TBR list overflowing after listening to this episode. If you have found even one book that you want to read, consider leaving me a review and telling me about it. Reviews are so helpful of the podcast, and I'd love to get at least 15 more before the end of the year. So if you can help me reach that goal, I would so appreciate that. But until next time, as always, happy reading, because life is better with a love story. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.